In the Land of Shadow, after a long and arduous journey through the Shadow Keep, the Tarnished may find themselves face to face with one of many statues of Queen Marika. Should they take a moment to pay reverence to the God Queen, the path will open, revealing an area unlike any other throughout the lands between. A calm and tranquil path beset with flowers of all colors and golden sunlight beaming down. A place that seems untouched by war. As we approach the town that we can see off in the distance, we're given a name to the location: the Shaman Village. It is at this location that two key items are found that link Marika to the village: the Golden Braid and the minor Erdtree incantation. Due to these items, it has become clear to many players that the Shaman were Marika's people, and knowing that Marika is a Numen from various items in the base game, through the transitive property it has been assumed that the Shaman were the Numen. Honestly, I'm mostly sold on this, but there's a few connections I'm trying to figure out here still because some things don't sit quite right with me about this. I really don't like how few item descriptions we got about the Shaman of the village and about Marika. It feels very inconclusive for a DLC that was supposed to elaborate more about Marika's origin story. I would also consider myself a skeptic, as in I'm not easily convinced by things, so I promise I'm not trying to be a contrarian here just for the sake of it. Let me take you on a quick journey through all the loose ends that I've thought of when discussing Marika and the Shaman village. Let's start off by talking about minor Erdtree. The minor Erdtree incantation tells us that Marika bathed the village of her home in gold, knowing full well that there was no one to heal. The golden braid, which belonged to Marika, also states that it is a braid of golden hair cut loose, Queen Marika's offering to the grandmother. What was her prayer, her wish, her confession? There's no one left to answer, and Marika never returned home again. The idea here is that the Hornsent killed off the Shaman, which are the Numen, and then Marika created the Erdtree and became a god. But then, if her whole village was dead and presumably stuffed into those jars, as we can see at the Whipping Shack, why can we play as a Numen? Why are there Numen runes scattered throughout the base game? There are Numen runes in the Halig Tree, at the Deeproot Depths, and even one at the Divine Tower of Caelid, among other places. In all fairness, there is a Numen rune that can be found in Jarburg, but the Jars of the Land of Shadow and the Jars of the Lands Between have different seals on them, implying both different eras and different methods of creation. Also, I find it odd that there is not a single Numen rune in the DLC. While an absence of evidence is not evidence of an absence, you'd think that we'd find one in the jails or something like that. Also, the Black Knife armor tells us that the assassins that carried out the deeds of the Knight of the Black Knives were all women and rumored to be Numen who had close ties with Marika herself. Ragier shares with us that these women were scions of the Eternal Cities as well.
This is a Black Knife print. I can scarcely believe you managed to get your hands on this. You recall our conversation about the Knight of the Black Knives, yes? They say the assassins who carried out the deed were scions of the Eternal City, a group entirely of women, arrayed in armor of silver under cloaks which fooled the eye.
So, why are the remaining Numen, the Black Knife assassins, scions of the Eternal Cities? If they truly are the Shaman, it would seem that their culture has changed fairly significantly throughout the years, which is possible, but it doesn't sit quite right with me. A shaman is typically viewed as someone who can access the spirit world in some way, and from everything that I know about the Numen, they don't seem to have this capability, or at the very least, it isn't demonstrated to us as players. The Numen are also stated to be from outside of the Lands Between. As we know, the Land of Shadow was once a part of the Lands Between, meaning that Marika was never from either the Land of Shadow or from the Lands Between, but rather somewhere else entirely. Remember that the Lands Between predates the Land of Shadow, as Marika created the Land of Shadow when she became a god, but both lands used to be one. Further backing this up is a statement on Bandai Namco's website that the Land of Shadow is the place that Marika first set foot, not the place from which she originated. So while the Shaman village seems to be Marika's home, yes, it doesn't appear to have been her birthplace, which is an important distinction to make. Remember that the Golden Braid tells us that Marika never returned home again. Is it talking about the Shaman village, her original birthplace, or perhaps both? Regardless, Marika definitely seems to have lived in the Shaman village, and she has made that place her home. But that does not mean that the inhabitants of the home were of her people. Remember that the statement is that the Land of Shadow is where Marika first set foot, not Marika's people. There is no indication that Marika was of the Shaman in the same way that she is outrightly stated to have been of the Numen. Moving on from specifically the Numen, I wanted to switch and talk about something else that's been bothering me, something I haven't seen a single other person bring up. The real thing that gets me confused here is that there are already enemies in the game known as the Shaman, and these are of course the ancestral follower Shaman, and they have a whole culture revolving around living in nature and among spirits, which is like shaman stuff. If we take a look at the living jar innards, they have long white hair, which is in line with every ancestral follower that we see. Furthermore, they practice ancestral worship, which is a prominent feature in the Hornsent culture, and it could even be that the Hornsent learned to worship revered spirits from the people of the Shaman village, or perhaps it was vice versa. Interestingly, there seems to be evidence supporting both. The ancestral followers emulate the Hornsent by wearing horned bands upon their foreheads, though they are without buds themselves. On the flip side, the Hornsent also seem to believe that the Shaman will be granted nigh sainthood for becoming placed in the jars, applying some semblance of reverence for the Shaman as a people. The ancestral followers practice the worship of the regal ancestor spirits and revere buds and horns grown from all sources, as well as the cycle of life and death. They're also stated to have lived a distance from the Erdtree, which is a little ambiguous, but perhaps hints at their origin in the Land of Shadow. I'll admit, though, this one is a bit of a stretch. However, all of these practices, and that one piece of evidence, seems to point to the ancestral follower shaman being from the Lands Between / the Land of Shadow, whereas the Numen are said to be outsiders. The Numen are the only group said to hail from outside of the Lands Between, in fact. So, all that I'm saying here, I guess, is that if I had to choose a people who best represent the sunny and bright Shaman village, it would be these guys, and not these. In support of the Numen, though, the flesh of the Shaman is stated to meld harmoniously with others, which is why we have these disgusting jar innards in the state that...
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry, Alexander. I wasn't talking about you, of course.
Ah, I hadn't expected to see your face again.
Yeah, no, we're just, Anyway, Marika, of course being a Numen, can be argued to have a flesh that melts harmoniously, seeing as she shares a body with Radagon. Also, the Numen runes do seem to be devoured by the giant ants, which maybe points to the same conclusion. One thing that's interesting too is that we find several ancestral followers in the Shiofra River by Nokron, which is somewhat of a way to relate the Eternal Cities to the Shaman. After stating all this out, I just don't really get why FromSoft would have used the term Shaman rather than just using the term Numen if they wanted us to think that Marika and the Shaman were related. Overall, like I said, this is just me talking about things I've been thinking about here, and because I hadn't seen anyone talking about this before. People were very quick to latch onto the idea that Marika was of the Shaman, but my only real conclusion is that I remain unconvinced that the Numen and the Shaman are the same. Elden Ring's lore, in my opinion, is notoriously difficult to understand, and it's very hard to come to a consensus when it comes to a lot of different topics. On my last video about the prisoner theory for Elden Ring, I saw tons of comments below that were vastly differing in opinions on stuff like Midra, and if his son was the real Lord of Frenzy, or if Nanaya was a finger maiden, and all sorts of stuff like that. Elden Ring is a difficult game to figure out, so if you disagree with what I said here, that's totally fine. Just leave me a comment and let me know what you think I missed or what I did right here. Thank you for listening to my mini rant. If there's anything you'd like to say in the comments, again, please do so. I'd love to hear what you guys all have to say about this. Before we go, I wanted to give a special thank you to those of you who decided to join the channel as members. Special thank you to OOP, Ruin Cod, Boris Bashinsky, Zhongjina, The Thin White Duke, Joel Evers, Debash, and Inherent Manex. Thank you for your support. It means a lot. I've been Dariloth, and I hope to talk to you guys down below. Peace out.